Welcome to Elite Broker, the podcast showcasing the leading players and stories of success from Australia's broking industry.
Hello and welcome back to Elite Broker. I'm your host for today, Annie Kane. And this week we're talking to a heavy machinery asset finance broker. It's not every day that we talk to asset finance brokers, but this time of year, asset finance is on a lot of people's minds. So we thought we'd bring in one of the elite brokers in the asset finance space to talk about what they're seeing in asset finance and equipment finance at the moment, how they've been building their brokerage, and what they've got planned for the year ahead. Joining me today is James Allan, the equipment finance specialist and director at MFG Finance here in Sydney. Welcome, James. How are you going?
Good, thanks, Annie. Thanks for having me.
James, thank you for joining me. How long have you been a broker for, and what made you get into the industry?
Broking for me came about unplanned. I didn't know the industry existed. My very first job, sort of while I was in between university, was working for a forklift sales company. It's actually a national business. And
cool.
I got a job sort of through a family friend, and I stayed in that role for a handful of years, and I was helping businesses. I was quoting forklifts to businesses who needed to buy them, and in the same breath also offering rental products, and then, taking inquiries from them on how they could go about financing their forklift purchase. So, that role specifically was just to be a forklift salesman, but eventually I gathered a little bit of experience in, leasing and rentals and forklifts and, weighing that up against, buying outright in cash, all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And, that kind of snowballed into getting to know a few finance brokers that we were referring inquiry to, and then started scratching my head a bit. What's a finance broker? What do you guys do for a living? And then not long after that, found myself in a traineeship role as a credit analyst for an equipment finance brokerage down in Melbourne. Stayed there for a few years, and here we are today.
So, I think it's always interesting when you look at people who've come into industry, because there's always different routes and paths. Like, there's no one way in. A lot of people, I think, assume that all brokers used to be bankers, but it's very rarely the case. And I think particularly in asset finance, a lot of people might have started in an equipment machinery plant or in a car, sort of sales room or something like that, and then kind of come to the broking side, the better side.
Yeah.
How long were you working in the forklift sales job for?
I think I probably got about 3 years in that industry.
Yeah.
And, not knocking that industry, but I sort of got to, I think I was maybe 21, 22, and I realized, look, I don't know if forklift sales is for me forever.
For the rest of my life, yeah.
Yeah. And I naturally was always quite interested in business, having done studying business at university, and just generally had, a curiosity for people who owned businesses and how they make their money and how they, hopefully one day become successful. It's something that I always had my attention on. I just saw, once I got to understand what finance broking was and the level of work that goes into sort of engaging with business owners especially, and helping them with their financials and seeking finance and working through things with them at that level of having direct insight to their business and how they're going. It's always been something I've just thoroughly enjoyed. So for me, once I worked out, that was sort of something you could do once you become an equipment finance broker, working at that level, and doing that sort of thing for people. It was a no-brainer for me that I wanted to step into that industry and have a go.
So you started traineeship in Melbourne. Is that where you're originally from?
No, I'm not. So I'm an all over the place sort of guy. So I grew up in Brisbane, went to high school there. Family's all still back there.
Yeah.
I think when I was maybe 20, I moved down to Melbourne.
Okay.
And I had about 5 years in Melbourne. And at that point I was 20, world was my oyster. I threw it all to the wind, and I thought, well, yeah, I'll try and step into the finance industry now. I've just turned my life upside down. I'll sidestep to a completely different industry outside
Why
forklifts.
not? When
have
you're
a
young
go.
and you've got, always the bravery and bravado.
Yeah, exactly. Thought I knew everything. Still do. But I jumped across and sort of didn't look back. And at that time, I had the option of joining that brokerage that I went to be in more of like a trainee broker position, which is sort of more client facing and obviously doing deals day to day, or the choice to step into a credit sort of analyst position and learn the ropes. And looking back, very thankful I decided, keep your head in a bit and learn the ropes. And I guess I could see there was, it was going to pay off for me long term if I just was patient and decided to go into that credit seat and learn how to analyze a business properly and pull it apart and learn how to pitch a business to a bank and negotiate an approval and go about things properly.
Yeah.
And thankfully a lot of the people around me at the time then gave me that advice and I listened and took that advice and decided to sit in that role because, what they were telling me at the time was, mate, if you just be patient and you do this role versus trying to jump into broking right now, you'll be better for it in the years to come with the knowledge you have and the confidence it'll give you to talk to clients and offer, you know, a specialist, bespoke offering. So
I think it's really interesting because like a lot of people when they first become brokers or if they're doing something, they're like, I actually don't want to do any of the processing. I just want to do the client facing work. And then you were kind of saying the opposite, like you want to do the structuring and kind of the back end stuff, the kind of the admin and doing the actual kind of the credit side rather than the client facing thing, because it's so much I think a personality thing too. Like a lot of people are like, I know I'm really good at sales, I'm really good at like getting leads, but I'm not great on the detail. And other people are like, I'm all about the detail and I hate doing the salesy type stuff. So how long was it before you went from the kind of the processing side and the kind of back end support to actually becoming a sales sort of broker and a client facing?
Yeah, it was definitely 5 years in the seat of credit, and there was a blend of documents and settlements in there as well. So it was a bit of everything that was operational. So definitely at least 5 years.
Yeah.
And then I didn't necessarily bomb dive into just waking up or one morning and deciding to be a broker. It in that 5 year timeline, I was picking up a few clients, and I think anyone in working for a large equipment finance business at the moment who may be in that operational role will get that. Hopefully all of the bosses they work underneath give them the opportunity and say, listen, if you want to get your own clients, we're happy to support you to do that, and grow your own portfolio and transition into becoming a broker eventually. That's great, and sort of taking that slow path. So I kind of went that way. I was sort of picking up a few clients here and there, and taking those easy opportunities where, for example, in our day-to-day, we're helping a client get their finance organised. We'll be contacting the supplier they're buying from and, requesting a tax invoice. We'll be writing to their accountants, requesting financial reports, or, there's insurance brokers to, grab certificates of currency for settlement. So there's heaps of touch points and opportunities there to, engage with those people post-settlement and say, listen, this is what we do. We've just helped your client. I think they'll be satisfied with what we did. So if you've got other clients in the same boat who need help just like them, we'd love an introduction. And it kind of steamrolled from there. And I picked up, I think for me, what really sort of accelerated me growing a portfolio of customers was getting really good relationships in with, equipment suppliers.
Yeah.
And my first one was actually naturally a forklift company that was selling forklifts.
I was going to say that. So did you start specialising in forklift finance?
Sort of, yeah. Like looking back, it's, you probably want to spread out to, heavier industries, bigger ticket size assets.
Yeah.
But for me at the time and a young fella, it was sort of like, I know forklifts, that's safe for me. I'll go into a forklift dealership and say, oh guys, I know what a 2.5 ton counterbalance container mass forklift is. I'm going to be able to help your customers. They were like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
Like, are you finance or a forklift salesman?
Yeah.
So for me, I was able to go in there with a lot of confidence and say, listen, I know the product you're selling and I can, back it up with the finance as well. And then from there, I just got a random spread of customers because, so many different businesses need forklifts, from manufacturing to, any number of businesses need a forklift. So we've had quite an interesting spread off that. But then that's kind of evolved and I've kind of refined, I suppose, the referral base and sort of the types of referrers we want to work with over time to come to a narrow point on what we actually want in terms of customers.
So what is that?
What is that? That's heavy machinery for us and heavy vehicles as well. So a lot of the business that's referred to us it comes out of people who are selling heavy machinery. And a lot of those guys we've now had relationships with for 10 years or more. And you meet one person, you end up meeting 3 and then, 9 and off you go. You kind of get into the circles and the bubble of those clicks. And for us, not necessarily by design, with the exception of, the wanting to chase the larger ticket value and deal sizes and specialise in that end of the market, especially that kind of full doc credit capability that I have and learnt. I went hard, I guess, early days, going for those sorts of referrers who were selling that heavy machinery and supporting them and doing a good job, and it's kind of just steamrolled from there.
Yep. Steamrolled, lovely.
Yeah, it's a good word, that one. And
is there anything that I think when I think of like asset finance brokerages, and one of the things that I love about when I'm interviewing asset finance brokers is kind of being like, well, there's so many weird and wonderful machineries and equipment. Like I remember one of the ones I did ages ago, I didn't even know this existed, but she was financing horse treadmills. And I was a bit like, I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know horses needed treadmills, but apparently they do if you're in horse racing. What's the weirdest thing you've ever financed? Or the most niche thing?
I think the strangest one I had once was for I think they call them the eagle cams in stadiums where they fly above the ground, the sports grounds.
Yep.
So I took some inquiries for those, and there's an onslaught of very weird, strange inquiry all the time. I think the coolest deal for me personally that I've done looking back, I did a firefighting helicopter a couple of years ago.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and that was in the 7-figure range, and it was quite a tough deal. We managed to get it set at a major bank, and it was a contractor who was going to go out there and fight fires with his helicopter. He had a big water belly tanker on the bottom, and it was a great deal to work on. It was a pretty cool one. It was a big, I think it was a 70s or 80s model Super Huey that had come in from the States. So it was just this, for me, it was a pretty big badge of honor to get that one settled. It was really, really tough and unique. So, looking back, it's probably, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a quirky one like
it's
a horse treadmill.
It's the one you remember, the hairy ones.
Yeah, that's the one that was really hard and just a cool asset to finance.
Yeah.
And I got to go down to where it was and see it, operate and get to sit in it, and I got to play in the cockpit and
cool.
Yeah. So
well, this is, I guess, it brings me to the next point, which is around how do you learn about the assets that you're financing? Because of course you need to kind of know what it is, what it's going to do for the business that is buying or leasing this equipment. And for certain things, if you are niching in a particular area, like say forklifts or heavy machinery, you can kind of get really good at all those products. But a helicopter, kind of slightly different thing. You can suddenly have to learn helicopters, understand what that lifespan looks like, what that asset does. Does it take you a long time to learn all the different parts of the machineries and the equipment that you're financing? And if so, how do you learn it?
Good question. Yeah, it sort of depends on the application, I would say, more so. When you're talking about a forklift, I think it's probably how you want to position it with the lender that you're intending to approach, and how much time and effort you think you need to put into understanding what the asset is and what it does. So in the example of the helicopter, it's a helicopter that fights fires.
Yeah.
So I think we can cross that bridge pretty easily without overcomplicating it. For sure, you want to try and keep things simple, and then second to that, probably just being a little bit more focused on, okay, how is this asset going to make money, and what's the income model here? Do you hire it out hourly, or do you have a standby contract where you're making a minimum per month, and then once it goes out, is there extra dollars on top, or is there success fees? What is it? And you want to go into the detail and the weeds there on, okay, we're going to have to figure out how to get the bank comfortable on how this thing's going to make money and service its own commitments. So for me, it's probably more about, how do we go down that rabbit hole rather than, getting super invested in the asset and, trying to become an expert on it, because that's not what we're here to do. We're just here to get the finance.
Yep.
And then maybe a bit more broadly, where I guess we've become a little bit more of a specialist, and I'd say probably 60-70% of our client base these days is earth-moving, mining, civil construction, not necessarily by design, just by alignment of the sort of people we are, friendly with and our referral sources. We've just naturally become a lot more aware of how that industry ticks and how the contracts work and how the income works and how their rates are set and, what sort of hourly rates a certain type of asset might attract and what sort of monthly minimums they might be on, whether it's going to a mine or a civil site or if it's just doing private, agri or rural work. Once you've had enough years in doing that, you tend to start sort of knowing exactly what the customer's in for in terms of how their business operates.
Yeah.
And the more time you spend, engaging different customers and who are buying, that asset spread, the quicker you're going to learn and become more of an expert in that field on what their business does, how it runs, how they make money, who their core customers are likely to be, and then what their financials are probably going to look like, and what you're expecting to see on the balance sheet, what you're expecting to see on the profit and loss statement. And it sort of becomes a little bit, you kind of know what the business is going to look like on paper before you actually get the financials, and you've got a rough idea in your head on where that applicant might fit in the market between lenders. So, for us, again, not by design, we sort of got that civil construction mining customer base. It's just sort of natural for us when we get an inquiry. We know how it's all going to look and how to help that customer quite quickly and easily.
So when you first get started as a broker, one of the first decisions you've got to make is obviously not only what kind of business do you have, but what kind of aggregator you're going to go down, and we're going to get in, become a credit rep or get my own ACL. What did you decide?
For me, it was really simple. After my time in Melbourne and the broker firm I was working for at the time, I knew of an aggregator called College Capital, and they're quite fringe or niche maybe. I mean that with affection. They're not well known. They're not heavily marketed like many of the main players that we see. It's quite a small office. I think there's 2-3 people in the business, maybe 4 out of Melbourne. It's not too many frills. It's not, we don't have events every month. We don't have, all of that kind of stuff. And second to that, John and Leanne are the people who run the business. Leanne's the CEO and John's her counterpart. Extremely down to earth, just good people, nice people, and have like quite a good, I suppose, policy on the sort of brokers that they want in the group. And any lenders listening, know most brokers in the College Capital network are, long-standing, multi-generational brokers who operate extremely ethically and, have very strong, good client bases and write very good business. I think we're quite a small, I don't know how many brokers we have on panel, but we're sort of definitely north of $1 billion a year and just very quietly over here in this pocket of the market. So it was a no-brainer for me that I wanted to go with them. I'm a pretty simple operator. I don't need the events and the, all the exciting bells and whistles that come with some aggregators, and John and Leanne just run a very nice, tight ship and keep it simple. And the fees, I think, are extremely fair. And the network of brokers is exceptional. So we have a once a year catch up where we all come together and we go someplace exotic and have a bit of a party, and the lenders come. And there's not one broker in that pool of brokers that I don't like. They're great. They're all good fun and just sort of that old school ilk of asset finance brokers who've been doing it for 20-30 years. So that was I just saw so much alignment there. They're my people. I just fit in really well with them. So that's where we've been.
So is it just clients here in New South Wales, or is it everywhere?
No, we're everywhere.
Yeah.
So and that's mainly because the people who are referring us business and who we're growing with, and also the word of mouth of our own customers.
National.
National. They're happy to buy equipment from anywhere. Like quite often, some of the gear we're financing for people can be $500 to $1 million, $500K, sorry, to $1 million. And especially if they're looking for secondhand assets or, whatever it might be, there might only be 2 or 3 of the exact spec asset they need in the country. And it might be through a supplier who's in Melbourne or Perth or up in Brisbane. So they're fairly agnostic with where they buy from. And so I think that carries through into dealing with us.
Yeah.
I've got an office in Sydney that I operate from, and my business partner, Dan, out of Melbourne. As long as we're getting the job done, they're happy to deal with us from anywhere. So we've got customers in WA, actually in all states, Tassie, Queensland, everywhere. So even though, we've got offices in capital cities, we're operating everywhere.
You go where things are being built.
Exactly, yeah. And find ourselves, traveling quite a lot. We'll go and meet with customers and meet with their accountants when they've got big picture plans in mind, and we need to work out, how do we make this work for banks to get you the finance you want. So, we're always traveling. We're always, Sydney and Melbourne aren't technically our offices. It's the whole country.
And weird as well, because you kind of think a major heavy machinery asset finance brokerage would be in Perth or Brisbane.
Yeah.
Like you'd think you'd be in WA or Queensland rather than in Melbourne and in New South Wales. But of course, there's work everywhere.
It does.
We're going to take a quick break here, Jason. When we come back, I'd like to talk to you about who we is. You mentioned your partner there at MFG Finance and what the team looks like, plus how you actually get your loans written, what tools and tech you're using, and how you structure the team. And we'll get into that just after this message. So you mentioned your colleague Dan there. Did you start MFG together or did you join him?
No, it's actually the other way around.
Okay.
So Dan's actually a long-time personal friend of mine and really well known in the industry, particularly out of Victoria. He used to work at Commonwealth Bank heading up the asset finance broker-introduced credit team.
So he knows his stuff.
He knows his stuff. And I think many asset finance brokers would agree with me. If you can get a deal set at Commonwealth Bank, you can probably go anywhere. They're probably one of the toughest when it comes to analysing a business. So Dan's skill set there on how to pull a business apart and assess it, if it gets the tick from Dan, we know we're probably good at any lender. So we've got a pretty strong vetting process there on particularly on guiding our clients on where things need to be to keep the growth happening and the finance approved. So So Dan and we had a really good relationship when I had my time in Melbourne. He was at CommBank at the time. I was working in a brokerage down there, and those were the good old days where you used to be able to just, sort of work in with an analyst at the bank rather than put it through a system, and had the ticket system. And, we got along really well. And eventually he came and joined the finance brokerage I was working for at the time. So we had a little bit of time working together, and I left Melbourne. God, I can't remember what year now. Probably must have been, could be 2015, but I'm probably wrong. And parted ways, wasn't working with him for all that time, but we stayed in touch and remained really close friends. And opportunity came up about 2 years ago where he left the firm he was working for and took a bit of a career break. And he was in touch with me because we're close friends, and said, mate, why don't you come over and just help me with a few? I got some large clients here, because he's very technically skilled. I've got some large clients I could use a bit of help, helping with limit reviews, covenant reporting, and everything else. Do you want to help me, sort of maybe as a contractor type arrangement? Answer was yes. We got into it and quickly worked out, geez, this is really good. Do you want to come on properly? And then all of a sudden he joined, and then now only recently, opened it up to allow him to be a partner, and he's officially a partner in the business now and a shareholder. So it's him and I.
Cool.
Off we go. Yeah.
So is it just you two?
Just us two.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's quite a bit of work to get through.
Yeah, it is. It is. But because of, I suppose, the concentration of our client base and how we're structured, we're not a typical, asset finance brokerage that's trying to accommodate everybody. Early days when I started as a broker, I would take any transaction I could get my hands on. You sort of have to if you're trying to grow. But for Dan and I, once he came on board, we got aligned together on, okay, well, if you're going to come across, Dan, like I want to make sure you're going to get, something out of this that works for you, and likewise for me. And if your plan is to be with me for the next 10 years or however long it's going to be, and we grow this thing together, how do we want the business to look? And we had to sit down, and both of us have had, decades more, of experience working in brokerages, obviously him on the lending side, and, know how it can be when you're trying to do everything, and you're doing everything from trying to get someone's car done before Friday because they want to surprise their wife on a Saturday for a pickup, to trying to get a multi-million-dollar helicopter financed, and the stresses that come with trying to meet the expectations of every customer can be really heavy, and it can make the job stressful. And I think that can, work against you sometimes in the way of trying to service the customers that are long-term customers. They might not be sort of a one-off customer, especially in the car loan space where you sort of hear from them only when they're replacing their car every few years. So you've got to look for a lot of volume there to keep up the business for your brokerage every month. Whereas for us, we've decided, I guess, to get some alignment on, okay, well, who do we want to service? What sort of clients do we want? And what headspace do we personally want to be in? Yeah. And for us, it's, well, how about we just double down on these heavy clients that we've got, or heavy industry clients we've got, who want that repeat business service, who know we're available, who know, we're not super stressed, and they can call us and we're going to be responsive, and we're going to be able to pick up a phone call from them and talk to them for half an hour to an hour about their business and their problems and their, everything that's going on in their world, and help find solutions for them. And both of us agreed that, when you're trying to do everything, and you're trying to do everything from the smaller car loans and the, transactional style of business, that there's a lot of churn, and then trying to meet the expectations of these larger clients who want that service, it's difficult to do both. There are some brokers who can do it and it's phenomenal, but for us, we just didn't want that level of stress.
So do you refer out those other businesses?
We do, So we're aligned with a few really good quality brokers who are more in that space and specialists in that, and guys who are, they're in the weeds doing that day in, day out. They know a lot more than us on policies for, those style of transactions. So we are just upfront and honest with that sort of inquiry that comes through, even for existing customers who sort of say to us, listen, my cousin's brother's workmate wants a Hilux. Can you help him? It's sort of like, listen, mate, we're actually better off getting this guy we know who's really good at that to do a good job, because we're specialising in this lane of the market.
He wants a diamond head drill where your people,
Yeah, exactly. Like we might fumble that, and he may want it by the weekend, and we just don't have the capacity to make that happen, because we're actually busy on these sort of repeat clients that we're trying to service and work with, and we're travelling for, and we're not, as in the ground with. So, that's sort of how we've decided to operate the business. And because of that, we're actually quite capable with, handling everything from inquiry through to settlement. Yeah. We're not trying to do 100 deals a month. It's probably peeled right back, not even half of that, and just larger ticket dollar size per transaction. And so because we've got more capacity, we can handle it. So we haven't really needed to have a massive, team and start employing people. But we are growing, and we might look to get somebody in who can support us with that, on the inward part of the business. But for now, it's working really well, and we're handling it nicely.
So when it comes to actually then getting through a lot of asset finance loans, I think typically when we talk about asset finance with resi brokers, we're normally talking about consumer car finance, or we're talking about sort of smaller ticket items like, the Utes, the Hiluxes for the tradies. But of course, I think a lot of them think, well, this is, super high volume business. But it sounds like obviously because your assets are much, much larger, you said the sort of 500K to the mil mark, like they're big pieces of equipment. You're writing fewer of them because there just aren't that many pieces of equipment in Australia as well to finance. What sort of average you reckon you write in the year?
I think we'd be in the early hundreds for transactions we write per annum. I'd suggest we'd probably hover around 30 transactions a month that we're settling between us. And average deal sizes, out in the wash, I think it's in the early 200K range. But, we might 1 month settle a $2 million digger. At the moment we're working on
$2 million.
Well, we are approved. We've got a limit drawdown coming for a $4.5 million, 200-ton excavator shortly. So, we'll do those, and then we might, for a customer who's, put 50 deals for us before, need a Hilux and it's secondhand and it's 30 grand just for a new staff member. That'll pull that average deal size down quite a lot, which is something that seems to trigger me when it shouldn't. But but that's fine because we love all deals for all of our clients. Don't get me wrong. But we're sort of not necessarily always looking at, how many deals a month are we doing and how many transactions are we writing and what's our targets, because, we just find that quickly can distract you from just doing a good job. I think like for us, we just remain focused on what do our clients need? Are we meeting those needs? And for us, that's just continue to prove itself to be the best model for us because we find that, you can quite quickly get yourself disappointed or put unnecessary pressure on yourself, or just put yourself into a headspace where you think you need to be doing a lot more if you're quite focused on those numbers. So we quite deliberately have agreed, like, let's just not set KPIs and let's not set like thresholds and goals and like minimum commissions and all that kind of stuff that you typically see in some of those high volume brokerages. We've taken the brakes off and the hooks off out on all of that and just run a very casual model and enjoy the ups and the downs. Like there are some days where Dan and I are on the phone and we've had a cracking month so far and we've done all of our work and we know there's more business coming, but we sort of say, we've got a pretty quiet afternoon here. Like, why don't we just one of us go home early or whatever it might be? And then all of a sudden, 5 phone calls come in and there's 5 or 6 deals to get done all of a sudden. It's all hands back on deck instantly. So that's
pretty organic.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's asset finance. I think a lot of brokers, particularly in the equipment finance space, probably mortgages and home lending as well. You can go from one moment feeling like you're on top of things and could take a little afternoon off here to all of a sudden your phone's off the hook and you just, how did this happen?
Yeah.
You're back.
Yeah, peaks and troughs.
Yeah.
The thing that I think is really interesting as well, when you look at equipment finance, is actually there aren't that many people doing it. There aren't that many people specialising. How many people do you reckon are actually specialising in this space in the broking industry?
Oh, like just you mean
competitors, basically. Like,
competitors?
Do you reckon there's like thousands? Is it hundreds?
I'd say hundreds.
Yeah,
hundreds. And I could be way off here, but I wouldn't think there'd be more than 100. True specialist heavy asset finance brokers. I think there are a lot of asset finance brokers, but many of them, might work more so in that sort of auto space. And there's lots of them, but if you're talking about people who are dedicated to ABN applicants only, business only, and commercial assets like construction assets and trucks and whatever it may be, I think it's a little bit more of a niche in the market. And becoming more so, I think a bit of a force in the game. I think maybe a decade or more ago, a lot of people might have thought that, asset finance brokers can do anything. But I think these days, I think there's a little bit more of a split off. I think that especially business owners are becoming a little bit more aware to, there's maybe a bit of a difference between some brokers and there's guys who are extremely capable and very good at that high volume, sort of more auto style of asset finance broking. And actually I've got a business and I need some drilling equipment, I think I actually need to be talking to somebody who's a specialist and more on a commercial level and knows how to, analyze my financials and make sure that what we're presenting to the bank is, up to scratch and where it needs to be, and articulating, my business and the deal and the proposal and how I'm expecting to make money, making sure that's presented to the bank in the right way. And, in my opinion, I guess there's, I think some business owners are starting to become more aware of, geez, I need to make sure I'm aligned with the right broker here to give my business the best chance at getting the finance it needs.
Yep. And you mentioned earlier as well about going and meeting with accountants, for example, with your clients. And I think this is, again, such a core part of being a commercial broker, is having that real understanding of the P&Ls and like talking to the accountants and understanding what the future growth plans are of the business and what exactly they're doing, what investments they're making, and how that's going to impact their business. It's so much more like in the nitty-gritty of the kind of actually looking at everything that business is doing and really diving into it. So you're kind of becoming almost like a business advisor for them. How do you find that kind of dynamic with the accountants? Like, do they ever kind of go, this is my area?
Who are you? Yeah. It's one that I got some really good advice on from some good brokers years ago on that, is just to be aware of, what lane you're in when talking to accountants, because all respect to accountants, they go to university for years and then go out and do the CA, and that's a big journey for them, and they've earned the title respectfully. And we're just finance brokers, and we're coming in saying, hey, the reporting's telling us this, and having our 2 cents there. So for me, I'm always mindful, firstly, of being respectful that they sort of make the decisions. But then in the same breath, literally, I've had this conversation with a client at 7:00 last night, running through him. He needs a dozer, and it's $500,000, and sort of having to educate him on, mate, your accountant is optimizing your financials for tax. That's their job. And naturally they're going to try and write off a lot of depreciation, and they want you to flush through as many expenses as you can to maximize your, minimize your net profit and therefore your tax. Yeah. For us though, we're on the other end of that saying, well, hang on, you want us to go to the banks and you're wanting the numbers to look,
you're losing loads of money.
Yeah. And, so that's not helping us show serviceability at the banks. And if you want to grow, you're going to have to find a middle ground here. So most of the time when we are meeting with the accountants, it's so that we're, with the accountant, with the client, with ourselves, and we're all getting onto the same page as to, listen, like, we're not here to tell you how the financials need to look or tell you how to do your job, but we just need to be aware that this is how the banks are going to interpret things based on what we've got, and running them through servicing exercises and, showing them what how the banks are going to treat the balance sheet, because we've had a lot of, depreciation, and now the balance sheet looks weaker, and, we've got to try to prop these things as well as managing how much tax we want to pay.
Yeah.
It's just a tricky game we've got to try and balance.
I think that also brings us to, how important it is for brokers to be really working closely with referral partners. And one of the questions we get asked a lot from new brokers is, well, how do I have and keep referral partnerships with people like accountants or financial planners or real estate agents in the type of, resi lending? Because so many of them, when they're first starting out, are like, these people already have brokers they work with. They already have these great clients, but I don't know how to set them up and get my name out there too. When you first started, was it kind of just talking to your existing clients and being like, introduce me to your accountant? Did you have accountants that you kind of knew you wanted to work with, or how did you actually find your referral partners?
Completely organic for me. Also, I'm not a salesy person either. So I'm not the sort of person who will phone an accounting firm and cold call and say, this is what I do, send me business. It's just not how I'm wired. So for me, what has always worked is to go in after you've done the job and you've done it well. And that's not only just accounting firms, but it's also, suppliers of equipment and machinery and assets. It's, the insurance broker. It's all the people you have to reach in a transaction where you've helped a client get the job done, do it well, and be confident the client is loving what you've done for them. And those are the opportunities to go and knock on the doors of those sort of third parties that you had to engage along the way.
And they still have the warm glow.
Exactly. Yeah. And you get to, you're the hero. You get to come in and say, listen, we've just done a great job for this client. I'd love to come out and introduce myself and just tell you what we do. And for me, again, I've never been salesy. I'm just a finance broker. It's a very, just keep it simple. This is what we do. This is how we do it well. We're very technical. We get in the weeds on the finance, and we sort of go for those tougher deals that are not quite vanilla. And, if you've got a customer who needs help, give us a chance and we'll show you what we can do. And for me, that's the organic piece. It's kind of grown from there.
Yeah. Just a finance broker? No, I'm a goddamn finance broker. Yeah.
Yeah, geez.
Wear it with pride. I'm going to take a quick break here. We're going to take a quick break here, James. When we come back, I'd like to talk to you about your future growth plans for the business. What sort of things, the challenges and opportunities you see in market at the moment, like what borrowers are asking you for, and what your biggest bugbears are in asset finance. And we'll get into that just after this. So, James, you're talking there about, how you kind of are working more organically with Dan and kind of taking your clients when they need business and looking at, kind of working with them really kind of day in, day out. But when it comes to looking forward, so beginning of a new financial year, often people start reviewing what their FY is going to look like, or beginning of a calendar year, people do the same, New Year's resolutions. Do you have any resolutions for FY27, anything you want to achieve?
Good timing of this question, because Dan and I actually had a catch up yesterday on what do we want for next year for the business. And we both agreed. Again, we're a low fuss, low stress operation. We're just happy with how things are going. Everything's going in the direction it needs to be going. So for us, I think it's just doubling down on giving our clients the support they want and need. We're certainly going to take opportunities to try to grow the business and work on some development here and there, and reach out to the suppliers and potential referral sources we can get to. But for us, it's just a matter of maintaining the status quo, because it's just seeming to work. But we certainly will put a little bit more time and effort, I think, into some of the content and marketing that we've been doing. So where we're really deliberate in our approach to marketing is that we don't really necessarily want to be running ad campaigns and be having, contact forms and 50 leads coming through a week and, all of that. We sort of want to be more so showcasing the kind of work we're doing with our clients. So what we've been doing the last year or two is actually getting to see our clients and getting some content with them and filming some of the equipment we've been financing for them and seeing it working and having the clients talk about what it's meant for them and their business and their growth. So I think for us, we're going to try to, it's a bit of a tall order, but try to get out to one client every month, travel around it, whether it's Perth in a mine pit or down to Tassie or up to North Queensland somewhere. We'll be on a plane there with a camera and trying to get some really cool content. So that's probably what we want to do, and just sort of showcase the journey of us growing with our clients and the sort of stuff we're doing with them. It's really fun and rewarding for us.
What are your clients doing in Tassie, Bridges?
One client we have down there, they have a quarry operation, and then they also have a haulage business where they're supplying like fertilizer to farmers and all sorts.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, they're quite busy there. So we went down there, I think might be 3 months ago now, and we went to the quarry and got covered in dust. And then the next morning we were up at about, I think it was 4 o'clock in the morning to see the trucks setting off for the day.
Wow.
Going down the road, getting some cool vision with a drone, watching them with the sun coming up. So
yeah.
that was
lovely.
pretty cool. But at the same time, just spending time with the client for 2 days in his business and watching him, manage things and work his staff. And it's an amazing insight. Like, for us, we can get just really, bogged down in the weeds of, looking at financials and negotiating with banks and doing the numbers, sort of nerdy spreadsheet stuff. But to actually get into a client's business with them on a day and see actually how it runs, it makes a significant difference to how you position and articulate, their business and operations and how that business is managed to a bank, giving the bank confidence they know what they're doing. So it's actually, I found it particularly rewarding, not just from the marketing and content point of view, but more so just getting to know how these guys run their business and what I'm learning about their business. Like, we see what we see based on what comes in on the financial statements and how that is communicated to a bank. But then when you actually get into the business and see what's going on, it's a different story.
Yeah.
And then you start to understand like why the numbers might look a certain way, and you get your head around those things a lot faster, which gives you a much better grounding to position them to a lender and explain the whys.
Yeah, and then I think it goes both ways, doesn't it? Because it gives you a much better understanding of your client, but it also gives your client a lot better understanding of you and how you operate and what sort of things you're interested in seeing. And again, like sharing their story with you. A lot of the time, the financials can be quite a vulnerable thing to hand over to a stranger. So actually having someone that you know and trust can really go a long way if they actually kind of know that you know what they do.
Yeah, and that's a great point to make, because something it may be a bit cringy, but I always say it's a massive privilege to handle finance for a business owner, to be willing enough to give us your financial statements and see what kind of money you make and whether your business is successful, and trusting us to be someone who can give feedback on that and help you grow a business and hopefully be successful. And again, like when you go and spend time with that client, you see at the end of the day, doesn't matter how big, profitable, successful, or whatever their business is, they're still humans, and they still want to go home at 5 and 6 o'clock and see their family and kids. And for them, it's about setting themselves up for success. And it's nice to see that side and be engaged in that side when you actually get to them in person and spend some time with them. So coming all the way back to your question, what's the plans for this year? I think it's a bit more of that. I think it's sort of getting closer to our clients and, being part of their journey, the growing together, which is our sort of whole motto is our plan, and getting in the bubble and just being part of that.
Where do you put all that content? Is it on like YouTube? Is it on your socials? Is it on your website?
Yeah, we have an Instagram page where we post it. So you can find us at mfgfinance.au. So you'll see some of those stories there, and come along for the ride, follow, and you'll see some of the visits if you care enough.
Broker followers.
Yeah.
I always want to ask brokers about what they're seeing in industry at the moment, and of course it's always ever changing. There's always something going on. There's always some sort of issue or some sort of opportunity. If you were king of the equipment finance and asset finance industry for a day, what would you do or bring in or, change to make broking better?
Oh, a couple of things. I think two. The first one would be, and I know this is a tall ask, but OEMs to open up the doors to brokers introducing applications to their own finance. I can name a few heavy construction machinery manufacturers. I better not, but they're very closed door when it comes to accepting applications for customers for finance. And I understand that they want to ring fence the client, and they want to well, if you're buying from us, we'll do your finance, and if you need payouts and support and whatever in future, you'll call us. It gives us an opportunity to see if there's more business. I understand that, but I just think if we had the ability to work with them and figure out some sort of arrangement that works, and if they want to be selective with brokers they work with, so be it. But there's a lot of lost opportunity there, and we're finding, especially a lot of the senior or larger size businesses that we're working with, buying big ticket items, 7 figures and up, they're based on the service they get from us when we're going to banks for them and the support and effort we go through. At times, I think it's a bit hard for them to have to do the work that we normally do at banks with those OEM lenders. So, and they quite often we've had situations where we've on their behalf engaged those lenders, and they won't pay us brokerage, but that's fine because we've got the rest of the client anyway, so it's okay, give and take. But it's just a missed opportunity there for them to help offload some of their own work and let us help the client. And geez, if you open up the gates for us there, we'll start sending you more business, and naturally the clients, I'm expecting you're going to be more loyal to buying your product if you'll work with their broker. So that's an opportunity there that I think's missed, and I'd love to see some vendor financiers sort of being a little bit more open to the broker market and being selective and being aware of, there's some that you could probably work with and it'll work. Outside of that, I think we need a massive tidy up to how AML works for a new customer. Every lender has their own understanding, interpretation or documentation or framework as to how we, AML a customer to a lender, and particularly in our space where we've got customers who need us to do 25, 50 and beyond deals a year for them based on their fleet sizes. And if we're spreading to 20 different lenders for them every single time, it's, we need to get your ID certified. We need you to do the selfie ID, and the amount of I have that conversation I reckon 1,000 times a year, mate. I know it's a punish, but just get it done for us. I just don't understand why we can't just everyone get together around a boardroom table and go, okay, let's figure out a 2-pager and let's just make this streamlined. Why are we all chasing our tails with our own interpretation of how this works? I get it. It's never going to work out. But I think that would be one obvious thing I think everybody could probably get alignment on and just make a lot more simple for customers.
Centralised ID checks.
Yeah. Just get someone who, we've got Equifax and everyone else for credit checks and also Credit Watch, right? Why don't we just have some sort of body for IDing somebody that's really thorough that all banks will rely on. So we can cut that part of the process.
My ID.
Yeah.
You could do something like that for business.
I just don't understand why it has to be so hard. I think that could be improved. But
all right.
Anyway.
Well, hopefully someone listening will be like, we can fix it.
Yeah, help us.
They will. Yeah. Thank you so much, James, for letting me pick your brain about what you've been doing at MFG Finance with Dan. And I always want to close off with kind of, things about being a broker is obviously hard work. And as a small business owner, you've got to kind of do everything from the content marketing and, flying drones to actually getting the deal written and to actually then, living your own life and raising your children. What do you do when you've had a really stressful day? Like, how do you shake off a tough week and unwind and de-stress?
Oh, for me, I'm a long walk guy. I'm usually up pretty early, generally between 4 and 5, and I'll use that time in the morning to throw the runners on and get a long walk in. I usually go for an hour. I might put on a podcast and just spend some time before the sun comes up, before the phone starts ringing, before the emails start coming in. That's my space in the mornings. I just tend to find some of the complex transactions we're working on, or tricky deals that we're working on, or we're trying to attract a really, really significant client, and there's a lot of head noise. Are we doing this right? Are we doing that right? I tend to find in the mornings when I'm clear-minded and I've had a good sleep and I'm by myself is when the good ideas come, and I can kind of think clearly and figure out what's next and how I'm going to go about the big challenge we might be having at the moment, or what might be stressing us out. It's pretty funny. Like a lot of mates or even referrals I'm really close with, Dan included, they usually know when I've been on a long walk because they'll cop a phone call and be like, "Mate, I got this idea. What do you think?" And they'll be like, "You've been on a walk again, haven't you?"
Yeah. So the creative juices flowing.
Yeah. All endorphins are all going. So that for me is that's my outlet. I think it's nothing. I don't have anything too out there for you. It's just long walks. That solves my problems, I think.
I love that idea. Although I don't love getting up at 4 a.m. and walking in the dark. I'd fall over.
Yeah. Well, that has happened a couple of times, and thankfully not on camera. But yeah. I'm an early to bed, early up in the morning type setup.
Right. So, there you go.
Especially with having a baby now. So,
yeah. You need some time for yourself.
Yeah.
When you think then about, like, if you were going to do your journey all over again into broking, or if you were talking to a broker who's just started in, the asset finance space, like, what advice would you give them to succeed?
I couldn't be more grateful to have listened. It was very hard for me at a young, cocky age, but to have listened to the people around me in the finance industry at that time to say, mate, just pump the brakes, just get into an operational role and learn how this industry works. Figure out how to be good at the job before bomb diving into becoming a broker. That was just unbelievable for me. If somebody was asking me for advice, I would say, listen, I take the time and go and learn the ins and outs. It'll give you so much confidence and know-how when you are actually deciding to be client-facing. Spend as much time as you can, especially before the age of 25 and 30 if you're young. Just sit in, just learn, absorb, soak it up, figure everything out and learn from brokers who are excellent and learn from brokers who are doing things differently or uniquely, or, you'll pick up and sort of start to understand what kind of broker you want to be. And the more time you can spend in that role and getting that experience, the better off you're going to be when you eventually do decide to be client facing and being a broker. Because having the skill set when I started, it was meaningful. It just gave me confidence to actually have a conversation with a client, sort of knowing what I was talking about and knowing also what I didn't know. If I got a question that I didn't have an answer to, it was easy for me to go, I've seen this happen before. I don't know exactly how it works, but leave it with me. I know who to call to make that happen because I've had those years of seeing how you problem solve.
Exposure, yeah.
Yeah. So that would be, without a question, the way I would go about it. If I had to start again, I'd just do exactly what I've done. I'm really grateful I went that way. I was just lucky I had people around me to tell me how to go about it. So
that's nice. Awesome. Well, James, thank you so much for sharing your story with us here on Elite Broker and talking about equipment asset finance.
No worries. Thanks very much for having me. Appreciate it.
If you've got any questions for me or for James Allan at MFG Finance, and do feel free to reach out. You can reach me at editor@theadvisor.com.au, and of course MFG Finance. He talked about his Instagram handle earlier, so you can give him a follow. Reach out on Insta. I'm sure they'll be happy to hear from you. Would you? Happy?
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. Threw you under the bus there. And of course, do take a listen back to previous episodes of the Advisor Podcast Network to find out what other leading elite brokers, new brokers, women in finance, lenders, aggregators, and journalists are up to at the Advisor. We've got so many podcasts in the back catalogue for you to get through. So do take a listen back to previous episodes and let us know what else you'd like to see covered in the podcast. If you've got any questions for us, pop them in the comments or reach out. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We hope you have a fab week, and we'll catch you next time for another episode on the Advisor Podcast Network.